From the View My Sports studios, it's The Breakdown with your hosts, Roger Tillis and Chuck Olesker.
Today's guest on The Breakdown is former collegiate tennis player Scott Miller. Hey, welcome to another edition of The Breakdown. I'm Roger Tillis, your host. I'm here with my co-host, Chuck Olesker, and I am here with Scott Miller, a former tennis player at the collegiate level, now the director of tennis for Julington Creek Rec Center.
Yes, sir.
Scott, I tell you, we are extremely happy to have you here on the show today.
Absolutely.
We have we get flooded with questions from parents and kids, and there's only so much you can find out in Google and in the internet as far as guiding them in the recruiting process with tennis. Mm-hmm. And tennis, it just, gosh, watch ESPN. Unless there's the big tournament, Wimbledon, U.S. Open, etc. It's not like they're following high school kids in tennis and putting them up like they do in football, baseball, and basketball. And really, baseball kind of takes a back seat there. So, of course, our job, at View My Sport, is to share as much information as we can for those that are out there going, hey, how do I get to college and play tennis? Is it a viable option for me? And that's where you come in, our loyal advisor, our professional, if you will. Let me ask you now, I want to get into this right off the bat because we have a lot to talk about.
Okay.
You being a former collegiate player, how old were you when you started playing tennis?
I was between 12 and 13. It's kind of hard for me to remember. I played once a week, recreationally when I was 12 for maybe a year, but I wasn't a tennis player, taking lessons and playing 5-7 days a week until I was 13.
Wow.
So that's late in the game for the average.
I was just going to say, you're kind of over the hill at that point.
I was a dinosaur.
Yeah.
For sure. Yep.
That is, now, did you play in tournaments and things like that? Were you a good enough player, a natural athlete, if you will, to where you were playing in these certain tournaments and looking at some of these kids that were playing since they were 5, born with a racket in their hand? How did you fare?
I had played other competitive sports growing up, like golf, and I played baseball pretty much year-round from 5, so I had a competitive base of skills.
Okay.
So I wasn't going in, never have playing anything, and then started when I was 13 and got to play collegiately. But, I wish I would have started earlier, but I was, happy with kind of the sports I played, and I'm glad that I found tennis at some point.
Sure.
So
good.
That's
good.
And again, you played collegiately. You played for University of North Florida, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Wow. Now,
Yep.
did you go as a walk-on, or did you go in on scholarship?
I was a scholarship player, but again, I wouldn't recommend the track that I took I played college tennis, 18, so 17 to 14, 13 years ago. So, the sport, I feel like it gets harder. It gets 2 to 5% harder each year for the next generation, with kind of like all the sports, just the specialization at a younger age,
the training,
right,
and all, yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So
that's and really, I thought, and again, this is why we have somebody who's in the know here to help guide us, the parents, the athletes. I really thought that even back then, if you weren't born with a racket, you weren't going to play any significant level of tennis, because there's just so many out there that are ahead of you.
Right. Now, I played in tournaments within like a month or two after starting to play, which is rare. But that's just because it was something my friends were doing. I wasn't competitive per se there. I got whooped pretty good the first 6 months I was playing tournaments, and I was like, wow, man,
Yeah.
I have a long way to go at this.
Yeah, I was going to say, I imagine that you very quickly reached that point where you said, is this really what I want to pursue, or do I go back to baseball?
Right.
And let's talk about that, because I tell you, kids in sports in general, we just talked about this with our gymnastics guest that we had last week. Same thing. These kids, they get in gun-ho, and then all of a sudden, they get their tail kicked, or they see the type of commitment. And it is a grinding commitment. What was that like for you yourself? Your own personal level.
Well,
Did you hit that wall and go, okay, now I got to make my decision?
Yeah, I mean, my dad played competitive baseball, and he was my coach growing up in baseball. And once he kind of saw that my love for that game was gone, and that, I came to him when I was 13 after about playing for 2 months, kind of in a break between baseball, and I was like, I really think I like this a lot more.
Wow.
And he was like, then you should pursue that, because if you play college baseball or varsity baseball or whatever, it's it's a
your
grind.
Life. It's your life.
It's a job when you're in college, so you may as well do something you like.
Sure.
So.
Well, kudos to your dad, because we hear a lot of the opposite, and understand we're not knocking coaches out there and youth coaches, and it's not like they're all a bad lot. We get that, we understand that, but it seems that more of the stories we hear are the negative, where the parent and you had it twofold. He was your parent and your coach, where they almost take a different approach, where they try to shame you into staying in baseball for their own particular reasons, or because baseball versus tennis, one's more of a premier sport and the other is not in their mind.
That's true.
So kudos to your dad for having
the general consensus. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and really, I mean, again, like I said, ESPN and all these other shows, you especially at the youth level, you don't see a lot. It's just not out there. So, it is more of an obscure sport.
Are you seeing, as the director of tennis at this local club, are you seeing parents who are like that now? I mean, it's
the pushers?
The pushers, and then at what age are you seeing very young kids coming in and wanting to?
We're a recreational facility in general, so we provide recreational options to get the kids in, and then we have more and more competitive levels that you can pursue as you come to us and say you like the sport. As the tennis staff, and I tell our staff this, our job is to kind of seek out the kids that like it, that excel at it / like it, coach the parents on what the correct path is and when to get more involved, when to push, trying to show them their role so that they don't hurt the kid's development or hurt his love for the sport or his development of that love for the sport.
What I call the stage mommy and daddies, the ones that are just sitting there with their arms folded, critiquing every bloody little thing they do. And you see that in sports in general, youth sports, but tennis and some of those types of sports where the parents are just heavily involved, they're putting a lot of money into it, and so they tend to. I would hope that you guys have some sort of guidelines where, okay, parents, we don't mind you watching. However, I mean, what is that? I mean, do you have like set rules that you allow them to watch, but they have to be from 500 feet away? Or
we definitely, the parent is allowed to watch, and it's a rare occasion where we're going to ask someone to leave. I mean, it's a residential recreational club.
True.
But there is a parent or two here and there that, over the last 10 years in my profession where I've had to say, hey, it's probably better if you don't watch, or, it's just kind of their handling of the situation. If they can sit there and watch and enjoy their, watching their kid participate and learn, then that's, but we don't want to blur the line between the coach and the parent.
Sure. Well, and that's probably the problem, where you have the parents that are doing the Monday morning quarterbacking, so to speak. They're over on the sideline and they're trying to tell the kid, there's a difference between just encouraging and then coaching. And you don't need a parent coaching while you're trying to coach. I mean, good God, that's
right.
I've been in those shoes before on the coach's side. It's tough. Now, what about high school? Now, did you play on your high school team, or did you just go right into a club tournament type circuit?
Well, when I started, I wasn't in high school yet. I was in middle school, and there wasn't a middle school team. I did play for my high school, for Fletcher, for 4 years.
Nice.
And we were very good. My first year or two, I played bottom of the lineup, like 5 or 6. I started, but at the low end. And then my sophomore and junior year, my junior and senior year, I played 1, and then 2 as a senior, because we got an exchange student in who was really good.
Yeah.
So.
Well, now playing at the high school level, and we'll get into a lot of detail as far as this goes. But for you personally, now, did you stick to the high school path and just play tournaments out of high school, or were you a registered member with the USTA? Did you belong to a rec club? I mean, what other things were you doing, if any, beyond the high school?
There was no really rec club team tennis at that time. There is now. You can play team tennis out of your club like we offer it at Julington Creek, which is great. It's a good recreational vehicle for those kids to start competing. It's not quite as competitive as USTA tournaments are.
Right.
I was in the USTA right away because I wanted to compete, and you have to be a USTA member to sign up for those tournaments. So I played both all through high school.
Gotcha.
Both high school and USTA tournaments.
What was the competition like, between the guys that you played, and maybe they were the same? Maybe you saw the same guys that you saw across the net in high school at these same tournaments, or was it definitely a step up at the USTA because you're getting people from, a variety?
I would say local USTA tournaments and high school tennis are a comparable level.
Okay.
You'll see a lot of the same kids playing those. Once you get to the Super Series level or level 6 in USTA tournaments and above, you're no longer seeing you may see one other kid or two other kids in the city that play high school tennis, a handful of kids that are legitimate Super Series level players that play in the USTA and play in high school. Past that level, it becomes less and less. You're seeing more kids that are not playing high school tennis that are, playing these sectional tournaments and designateds and any tournament that's listed on the USTA national schedule.
Gotcha. Now, is it because this schedule by the USTA is so? Are there so many tournaments where the kid and their families are so busy traveling to all these different tournaments that they don't have time to do the high school, or is it just a sort of a mindset where I'm going to work with my coach and only go to these tournaments? I could play high school if I wanted, but it's just again, some coaches might say, "Hey, I don't want you playing on your high school team. It's too much tennis. You stick with me, and we go to these tournaments, and that's." Explain that a little bit if you don't mind.
There is some of that. The USTA calendar and the amount of competition that you can play as a competitive player is so large. So the better you get, you're always kind of like, okay, now I'm ranked this in my age group. Do I start playing the next age group to accumulate points so that by the time I'm 13 or by the time I'm 15, I'm already in the bigger tournaments in my age group? So some kids are playing two age groups at once. They're playing, I might be playing 14s sectionally at the Super Series and the national level, and I'm also playing another schedule of 16s to make sure that by the time it gets close to my 15th birthday, I'm able to qualify for these state and national level tournaments in that upper age group.
Gotcha. And of course, going to the upper, because that shows, well, check me, my skill level is at I can play in the higher levels. I'm younger, but I can play, which, I guess speaks volumes of your talent.
Right. Yep.
Now, we talk about the USTA quite a bit, and we'll get back into the tournament aspects and whatnot. For those out there that are maybe new to tennis, or maybe new to, maybe the kid picked up a racket and is some sort of phenom, what exactly is the USTA?
The USTA is the governing body of tennis in the United States for all levels of competition, adult and kids.
Okay.
And there's different levels of competition. The USTA has done a great job they cover, recreational beginning level 7, 8, 9-year-old and up. You can be competing in a tournament in the USTA of some level.
Okay.
And there's different levels you go up. Like when you look if you looked on the USTA Florida website and you looked at the tournament calendar, you would see level 8 through level 1.
Okay.
Level 8 is kind of an entry level This is for kids that they used to be called rookie tournaments. Now they're called rogie tournaments, I believe.
I think I'd rather be called a rookie.
That's right.
But they're for kids that have really never played tournaments before and want to get in.
Mm-hmm.
Level 7 is a local tournament, which you would find a lot of the kids that are going to play junior varsity, high school, varsity, high school. That's most of them at that level.
Okay.
Then the Super Series level and up is kind of the kids that, if you're successful in Super Series, there's probably spots on a college tennis team somewhere for you.
Wow.
At the lower levels, and then Florida designateds in every section in the United States has designated sectionals, sectional championships or state championships and so forth. And kind of, I'd say level 5 in the USTA and up is kind of like you're in the mix to be recruited at some level of college tennis, whether that's JUCO or D3 or D2 or
NAIA
lower
or-
D1
right,
or whatever. NAI.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's interesting. Now, with the kids that are in the USTA, and again, there's this divide that seems to be out there, and not just in tennis, but in sports in general. Softball is one of them too. Do you play high school or do you play in the elite outside areas? In this case, with the USTA, obviously we found that you can do both.
You can do both.
But once you get into that the Super Series, and you start getting that kind of notoriety and that kind of schedule and whatnot. Now, as far as the scholarships go, that level is pretty evident, as you're playing these tournaments in the USTA. Let's say, God forbid, that you're a kid that's playing at the high school level and you're not doing these tournaments. Maybe you can't afford it. Maybe, maybe the parents just like, man, we've got to travel, just can't afford it. Well, just do your best at the high school level, and we're going to see what we can do. For those kids that are taking that path, and it's funny, Chuck and I talked about this, that, do the college coaches sit there and pull the USTA stats and they go, okay, Super Series, all right, top 500 from here down. Okay, these are all the ones we're going to basically go after for our scholarship. Are they not even looking at the kids in high school anymore? Are they strictly looking at USTA? Unless you just have that weird phenom that pops up on YouTube or something. How is that working these days?
I know a bunch of college coaches, in particular assistant college coaches at bigger programs. I've never heard of one of them recruiting someone solely from the kids' high school tennis team playing experience.
Okay.
Now, that may happen in other sections of the country that I don't know about, like say in the Northeast or something like that. Like
maybe
in
a smaller
area. Division II school or a smaller Division III school. But I think even those levels of play are pretty strong,
Yeah.
Whereas that kid's going to have to send a tape and really knock down a coach's door, and the coach is going to have to be in a position where they can take a player like that. That's going to be a free player, someone who's a walk-on or trying to walk on.
Right.
And then, particularly on the men's side, a men's coach isn't going to – they only have 4.5 scholarships on a fully funded team.
Right.
They're not going to commit any sort of risk to an unknown. They can't afford to.
Sure.
Right.
They could lose their job.
Especially your Division I, your higher,
It's not like
programs.
football where you've got 83 scholarships and if this guy's a super talent, and has no results whatsoever, I'll take a shot on him. And if he pans out, great. If not, I got 15 other scholarships.
All
in that
these other
position.
guys can bail them out.
If you commit money to someone, you need them to pay.
Come off that list. Gotcha. Well, tell you what, we're going to take a quick break. This is good stuff. We're going to really dive into this for the parents and the tennis players out there that really want to know, what do I do? How, what's the direction? What are the things that I need to be writing down to make sure I'm doing? Stay tuned in. Pay attention to what we're talking about, and I think you're going to come up with some good tips and some good direction. So tune back in. We'll be right back. Are you a high school athlete, parent of a high school athlete, maybe a high school coach or a college coach looking for a high school athlete? or just a fan of high school and college sports? Then you need the ViewRecruit mobile recruiting app. It's got everything. Athletes can create profiles, including their highlight videos. They can use the Recruit network to send their profiles directly to college coaches. If a coach likes your profile, great. You get a notice directly on your mobile device and receive an email to boot. College coaches can receive updates directly on their devices and use the search function to find the talent that fits their program. Whether you're an athlete or a college coach, it's like having your very own recruiting department right at your fingertips. Download the ViewRecruit app now on iTunes for your iPhone, iPad, or iPod Touch. Be part of the #1 high school athletics and college coaching network. Get it today, the ViewRecruit mobile recruiting app. All right, and we're back. Thanks for joining us here on The Breakdown. I'm Roger Tillis, your host, here with Chuck Olesker, your illustrious co-host. Got to say that word at least once every show.
At least, yeah.
It's in the contract. I hate contracts. Joining us today, of course, is our special guest, Scott Miller, a tennis aficionado. He's the man that knows all the answers. As we've stated before, Chuck and I know absolutely nothing.
At least I think so.
In our eyes, you are
right.
the tennis god.
Yes.
And if anybody saw me play tennis, they certainly would know I am not. Just ask my wife. She drums me constantly in the game, and that's okay. Got to make her feel good, I guess. You know? That's it. I'm taking it easy on her.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rachel. Okay, now we're getting into different aspects of tennis and in kind of different directions. High school, USTA, and where the two intersect. Mm-hmm. And just to kind of summarize, for those of you just joining us in our last segment, we talked about high school and USTA. Where really, if you're a serious candidate for the collegiate level, you really do want to try to get involved with the USTA tournaments, get registered as a member. Their website is fantastic as far as location of tournaments and how to go about getting involved. You need to follow that level of the sport. We're not saying that that's the absolute only way you're going to get a college scholarship, but we're saying it's highly recommended if you want to improve your chances.
And let me just say, my experience in high school tennis was good, and I had fun, and I wouldn't change that. But I think each person should evaluate their situation and say, where am I currently at? What are my goals to play in college? If I need to play catch up, maybe I don't have that time to play both, or maybe I do fall into the range of these schools that I want to already versus my peers, and I do have time to play both. So it's kind of it's
a personal preference.
It's a team decision with the parent, the coach, and the player.
I'm glad you said that. And we talk about that a lot.
That kind of is your team in tennis.
Your support group,
Yep.
You bet. And each has their own specific role. I tell you, before we move on to that, we need to get into our special Athlete of the Week, the ViewMySport.com Athlete of the Week. Chuck, who do we have this week?
We have an outstanding young man out of Freedom High School in Tampa, Florida. He's the Patriots. He is a linebacker, Jason Canada, 6'2", 220-pound specimen, all-around great young man and tremendous scholar, athlete. And so, Jason, congratulations on being ViewMySport.com's Athlete of the Week.
Outstanding. Congratulations, Jason.
Good
Great job.
Jason.
And he's, what, class of 2014?
Yes, he's a senior. Yes.
So you'll probably get a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
Nice. We'll keep it going. I tell you, our message to the kids that are out there, and especially our athletes of the week, keep the grades going too, man.
Yep.
We have example after example after example of great athletes, great grades. The doors open for them easily because that combination of good grades and good talent on the field or in the pool or on the courts, wherever your sport's taking you, that combination is deadly. It'll just give you so many more opportunities. So congratulations, Jason. We look forward to great things, and we'll be watching. Speaking of great things, let's talk to our great guest here a little bit more about the opportunities that are out there from a collegiate perspective. And again, I want to kind of go backwards a little. The USTA. Now, we have the United States Tennis Association. I assume, and again, I can only make an assumption, that from a global standpoint, there are the the other national tennis associations for other countries too, because we are a global existence. View My Sport helps kids all over the world. So let's say you have a kid in France or a kid in England or wherever he may be, they could probably follow that same path as far as the tennis clubs and whatnot. Obviously, not necessarily high school, but that they have that organization as well out there.
They're going to have a USTA-like organization in their country. It's going to be their country's federation. Now, each country's federation sets up their junior structure differently.
Certainly.
Like in the United States, there's 18 and under, 16 and under, 14 and under, 12 and under, and 10 and under. In Spain, and I've just heard this secondhand, there's one ranking with Nadal as number one, and all the way down to a 12-year-old kid's on that same list. He just beat maybe number 150,000 or something like that.
So it's there's number one and everybody else.
Right, and I think Germany is similar. They have a similar ranking list like that, but I do know that they also have 18 and under or 19 and under, and I may be a little off. I'm definitely no expert. This is just things that I've heard.
Interesting though. That is like Ricky Bobby says, you're not first, you're last. It's funny though. And this is just from sort of a personal outlook. Okay, in the United States, we have all these little age groups, and everybody can compete, and there's little winners all along the way. It's kind of like that attaboy, for everybody. Everybody's a winner in physical fitness, that kind of thing. Right. Some of these other countries is like, if you're not winning, you're nothing. So get motivated, chase that rabbit around the track, and it's almost like you kind of wonder. I mean, I'm not saying that the United States tennis is in disarray, because obviously we have some fantastic players, but you look at some of these players that come out of some of these small countries where they don't have the base to pull all the players out of, and there's some really good players. You wonder if that has a little bit to do with it. Hey, you want to be up there? Go get it. And that means you might have a 10-year-old playing an 18-year-old and having to, fight through that. That's kind of an interesting thing to pursue.
How would a youngster, playing in Europe, be, I guess, recognized or recruited into a U.S. Program?
College?
Yeah.
At that level, those players, if now you're talking about a lot of those players are coming over at the big D1 level. I mean, there's foreigners throughout all of college tennis, but a lot of them are, they may have a ranking in their country, or the better ones may have a ranking on the ATP Tour in the men's. It's very common for. And a lot of the kids and the parents don't realize this. At the top level of Division I, the number 5 player for the University of Georgia or Florida or something has some ranking points in the men's from lower level ITF, like minor league events where they're qualifying and winning matches.
And these are events because somebody says, oh, no, wait a minute now.
And those are events all over the world.
Yeah, and I think a lot of parents probably think, oh, well, I didn't think that, my kid could compete like that, because isn't that crossing into the professional versus amateur? I mean, where's the line drawn?
If you take money.
So you could play.
You can play as an amateur.
So you could play as an amateur in a huge event. And as long as now you're not taking the money at all. I mean, it's not like you take it and then donate it. You're just not taking it at all, or is there some gray area there? Kind of curious about that.
There is some gray area, and I don't know all the specifics about this, but it used to be you could take money to cover your travel expenses, because you can get to a pretty high level of pro tennis. I could go to California and win a futures in the main draw and win $1,200. And it costs me way more money to stay in California for 10 days with my flight and everything else like that. But I think they have cracked down on some rules. Again, I'm not a college coach, so I don't know all the specifics. Some of my friends would, but, at this point, I don't think they're taking any money, I believe.
And that's probably a good rule of thumb.
Right.
When in doubt, just, refuse it all. That's a good point, though, and that's something that we will get that information, and we will find out we'll verify and validate that, and we'll post it on both our website, and we'll also post it on our Facebook page, and make sure that that information is available out there, and it's readily available. We just don't have it here on our desk.
Right.
But we'll definitely find that out. Because we just had a kid. I don't recall his name because we have so many now on the site, but he used viewmysport.com from Austria. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he got his scholarship right down the street at Flagler College.
Okay.
And he was one of these kids. He was playing in a lot of those tournaments and whatnot. And in Flagler, I'm not an official when it comes to knowing who's ranked where. I don't think Flagler's necessarily one of the top Division I, programs out there. I think they have some good players, as a lot of schools do, but I don't think you're going to see them.
Flagler's
do you know more about that as far as what their program's like?
They were my arch rival at UNF, one of them.
Aha.
Right.
It was Rollins and Flagler was the teams we wanted to beat the most, and they were an NAIA college, and they were a top NAIA college. Now they've moved to Division II, and I want to say Flagler finished last year somewhere around 25 to 35 in Division II in the country.
Wow.
Because I have a couple kids that I coach that kind of falls in the range of one of the schools that they'd like to play for. And, one of them is seen as a good fit. I think they're actually looking for a coach right now, or they may have just hired one.
Interesting. Well, again, there's different avenues. Now, I know that he used his profile, and he was proactive. He was because we can track and we can see, and he was sending it out as most of our athletes do, because that's how we're designed. And we recommend that. And we were talking during the break about, and this is a great tip for you parents out there and the athletes. If you're wondering kind of, at what point in time do I start shopping colleges? What time do I start getting information out in front of coaches? Well, as Scott has said, do not do as he said, or don't do as he did, do as he says. And the message
That's how
there
we all
is,
learn in life, right?
That's exactly right. So essentially, start early. You don't have to wait until you're, winning all the tournaments. Start young. Get the exposure. Maybe you'll send information from our website with your profile to a coach, and maybe you're in middle school. Maybe you're not there quite yet. But you want to contact, you want to reach out. Maybe it's been your dream to attend this particular college, or maybe it's some local colleges that are within driving distance, and you want to find out if they have camp information. You're just trying to get exposure. You're trying to get on their radar and get that introduction, because that relationship with that coach that starts out as something very minor at that point can blossom into a great relationship. They watch your progress, and all of a sudden, when you are at that point, you've got that coach, you've already got that relationship built, and it's easy to stay on that radar. Again, you got to get after it. You got to do the research on the colleges. You have to do research on the coaches.
And I would say, ninth grade is, evaluate kind of where you are in the USTA ranking and tennisrecruiting.net, and do some research on the colleges and their recruiting class. There's different websites for that. You can see, I know on tennisrecruiting.net, you can you can click on the college and it has their last 5 recruiting classes and whether they were taking 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, or blue chip players.
Excellent point.
And then you can kind of say, all right, I kind of fall in this 200 to 300 range, and you make a list of 10 or 12 colleges and maybe narrow it down by location or your financial situation, and see who they're recruiting, and then send them emails.
Boy, you hit the nail right on the hip. We talk about research and making sure that, you're not trying to do the old proverbial square peg in the round hole. You could go to a certain college on a scholarship and then realize, oh man, the classes aren't set up exactly the way I like, or the location. Boy, I sure miss my family. This distance is not what I thought it would be. The social scene. There's so many things. Tell you what, you may get on the team and realize, don't like my teammates. I mean, it could be something direct. So there's so much to research. And what was that website again?
Tennisrecruiting.net.
Tennisrecruiting.net. Do the research and find out. You certainly don't want to spend time sending your profile to coaches at programs where there's no need or you just aren't going to fit from a skill perspective. Like he said, I mean, if they've got nothing but 5, 4, and 5 stars, and you're pretty much a 2-star, sorry. Guess what? JUCO NAIA level player of any sport, you're not going to be all of a sudden miraculously getting recruited by Division I coaches. And I don't care what sport it is. That's just the way it is. So, yes, everybody wants to be on ESPN. Everybody wants to be, take that glory road in sports. But there's a point in time where you got to check yourself, be realistic. Start small, and we've had coaches and former athletes on the show in the past who have said, man, send your profile to JUCO coaches. Send it to NAIA, especially early on. We're not saying don't send it to Division I, but spread it out because you don't know where and at what time you're going to fall on their radar as a valid, real prospect. And nothing's more truer than in tennis. That's for certain.
And that website is important for the kids and their families to get familiar with because tennisrecruiting.net is kind of the new primary ranking that college coaches are recruiting from. The USTA is like a 2-year revolving window. So my national ranking is versus kids within, a year older than me or a year younger than me. It's a 2-year window.
Gotcha.
Tennisrecruiting.net is like rivals. It compares you to all the other people in your graduating high school class.
Excellent.
And rates you versus them.
That's good stuff. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Well, tell you what, it's time for another break. Make all your notes, parents. Get everything written down. To say this before we go on break, if you miss something or if you need clarification, if you want to ask specific questions, please go to www.viewmysport.com. Click the Contact Us box and fire over your questions, your comments, your needs, whatever is crossing your mind that you need help with. Fire it over to us. We have a great board of advisors. We have excellent people like Scott here who can answer questions, and we'll try to plug things in and point you in the right direction. That's what we're here for. We are a helpful resource. And really, that's what it's all about, is using the resources to your benefit. So anyway, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. There are thousands of high school athletes that want to play at the college level. They just don't get noticed. At ViewMySport.com, we get your game out of the shadows and into the college spotlight. It's fast, easy, best of all, it's free. In the time you can text your friends, you can create and send your own athlete profile to as many colleges as you want. Get to the next level. Visit ViewMySport.com today and follow the 3 simple steps. Why wait? Your competition's not. All right, and we're back. Hey, thanks for joining the Breakdown. I'm Roger Tillis, your host, here with Chuck Olesker, and our guest today, tennis official, we'll say tennis royalty. How about that?
That's really
Scott Miller, director of tennis at the Julington Creek. Is it Julington Creek Tennis Center, Rec Center? What is Julington Creek?
Julington Creek Plantation Community Development District.
There you go. That sounds pretty heavy.
Yeah, it's the official employee paperwork when I'm filling it out.
We'll take that. And for those of you that want to know where that is, if it's in Florida, it's in St. John's, Florida, just south of Jacksonville. So any of you that are coming through Florida and want to grab some tennis lessons or information, this is your guy,
there you
Julington
go.
Creek. Remember that.
That's
We
right.
just gave a
All the
shameless
time.
plug for Julington Creek.
That's right.
Man, that's billable hours. That's it.
There we go.
They should take off some of your fees for that.
That's right. That's right. All right. Now, we've talked about all kinds of stuff. And again, we're not trying to give you such detail that you have to follow step 1, step 2, step 3. We're trying to discuss things in a broad sense because everybody's different. The needs are different. Where you live is different. You might have someone who says, hey, I want to go to a small college. I want to play NAIA, which, by the way, NAIA schools have a lot of tennis opportunities. Matter of fact, they have on their teams and whatnot, they have just about, from a scholarship perspective, I think they have one or one and a half more scholarships to offer on their teams than even Division I.
Right.
So from a scholarship aspect, hot dog, a lot of opportunity. So our point is there's no one set path. Now, there are special rules that I think apply to anybody. Again, as we've already said, start early. Get on viewmysport.com and get that profile set up so that you can proactively send it out to coaches. Also, so you're in our database because college coaches will look at that as well. You don't turn down a handout, and that's what viewmysport.com really is in the recruiting world. It's a handout saying, hey, you can't, I've never heard anybody complain about too much exposure, too many offers, too many coaches calling, and we're not saying that we're going to promise you a scholarship. We're not going to guarantee any of that because anybody who's out there doing that, they should be put in jail, quite honestly, because you can't do that. I don't care how many checks you write them, but the fact is there are certain things that you want to do, and you want to be proactive. And at the top of that list is also stay in the classroom strong. We talk about special training, and the role that the trainers and the coaches have, and then the parents. By God, you better be using your teachers, your guidance counselors, and your tutors, because there is a huge difference in what you can have offered as an athlete. Say if you had a 2.9 or a 3.2 even GPA, as opposed to a 3.5 or 3.7. Doors open up. Tell you what, NAIA loves the high GPAs because that's where a lot of their scholarship money can come from. And believe me, Division II, a lot of these programs, not everybody has millions of dollars in their recruiting budgets. So they want to stretch that buck. So believe me, make it easy on these coaches to pick you as the recruit prospect by having good grades. Because if you don't, you could literally be throwing money out the window. So speaking of camps and whatnot, how's that for a segue?
Okay.
I don't think we were, but speaking of camps, now like a lot of sports, there's softball and wrestling and football. I mean, combines and camps and specialty tournaments and whatnot. Now, are there a lot of camps at the collegiate level in tennis?
There are. Each college most colleges have their version of a tennis camp.
Mm-hmm.
Some colleges have two different camps, and one is more of a getaway for a kid who maybe only wants to play high school tennis or is a recreational player that they charge a decent amount of money for, but it's a fun trip. And the other one is more of a high performance type camp where you're taking from guys that are on the team or the head coach or the assistant coach or the volunteer grad assistant coach or whatever.
So really the nitty-gritty of, the cream of the crop, so to speak.
Right. I wouldn't say, from what I know about, say, football with the Florida State and Georgia and Florida camps, a lot of the top prospects go to those camps to get exposure to those coaches.
Right.
I don't think it's quite the same level in tennis as far as that, because there's so many vehicles for competition where the coach can just look at your results online and go watch you play somewhere in that region, within 100 miles of them.
Right.
You could play 120 competitive tennis matches in a year, which is a million different opportunities for coaches to see you play.
Right.
Yeah, it's not like 12 to 15 games and that's it. I mean, you could virtually year round.
Where you're playing in Washington State and Florida State's recruiting you, and you play 10 high school games.
Yeah, it's a little difficult.
It's different, amount of exposure, I think.
Gotcha.
I think there is some of that, but I don't think it's to the level of what I've read about, say football, where that seems to be pretty big.
Right.
Well, it's and you said this already. I mean, it's a great opportunity to maybe put a face with a name and have direct contact with a coach. And this is something that we recommend to the kids in all sports when they do go to these camps. Contact the coach ahead of time, especially if you're wanting some evaluation time. Contact the coach ahead of time and let them know, I'm going to be at your camp XYZ. I just wanted to see if we could set some time aside so that I can meet you personally and maybe get a little eval time. And that seems to work favorably, not 100% of the time, but it's a better way to get a bigger bang for your buck at these camps if that's what you're looking for. Again, not the recreational side. I'm talking more of the serious.
Right.
All they can do is say no.
And on a slightly lesser level, I think there are colleges that will have like, if someone is interested or a high school kid contacts them, there may be a non-sanctioned tournament that they're having at their college or in the city nearby, and he could say, "Hey, my guys are playing this men's open event. You should go play the tournament. That way I can see you play."
Boy, that'd be a hell of an opportunity.
Absolutely.
That's a great idea. That kind of comes under that research umbrella. When you're out looking at colleges and whatnot, maybe find out if there are those types of events. Ask the coach, "Hey, is there a particular event that you're going to be at that maybe you'd recommend for me to participate in, whether they sponsored or somebody else is sponsoring it?" That's an outstanding tip for the parents and the athletes out there.
And I think that's it. It's some of the NAIA schools, Division II, Division III, may have that. At the higher levels in the top, 60, 100 programs in the country, you got to get to where you're in USTA Clay Court Nationals or USTA Hard Court National Championship with the top 198 or 128 kids in the country. Now, I think they recently may have changed it to 64, but high-level national events, there's going to be a whole bunch of head coaches and assistant coaches from big programs walking around recruiting.
I bet. That would be, those kind of events are huge. Outstanding. Well, now, it's funny, talking about numbers, and we talk about, the amount of players that are out there. We were looking over this during the break, and it's amazing. I think it's only like 6% of all participants actually go on to play collegiately. I know that in the NCAA, and from a scholarship, now this is something to write down because this is the type of information that gets inaccurately fed to parents all the time. So we're basing this off of the 2012 season. NCAA 1, there were 1,184 scholarships offered available to the men's side and 2,592, if my eyes are reading this correctly, that went to the women's side. Now, that's just Division 1. Division 2, you had another 743 for the men and 1,338 to the women. Then it gets down to more moderate numbers as you get into NAIA. Just to give you an idea, though, NAIA 490 men's scholarships and 550 to the women. So for the men's side, hot dog. I mean that's just again a lot more out there. So again, these are the scholarships that are out there that are available. To give you an idea, though, if you're sitting there thinking, "Oh, well, my kid's good. Shoot, they're kicking the crap out of everybody in the neighborhood rec league, Well, out of the year of 2012, high school tennis players, you had 195,960 men. You had 218,093 women. Out of those numbers, the number of college tennis players, 10,000 men, a little over 10,000, and just under 11,000 women. So you can see, well, gee, out of almost 200,000 and over 200,000, only 10,000's, going to college. And that's not all on scholarship. That's just college tennis players.
Right.
So you're talking, 5%. Believe me, it is super competitive. If you think all you have to do is show up and play, yes, there's that 0.019% of the blue chippers that are out there just destroying it, that they're at the top of the list. But for everybody else, you got to scramble, and you take advantage of every little thing you can do to get exposure, to be seen, to converse with coaches. Use the tools like viewmysport.com, the directories to do the college research. The great tip that Scott gave us with the website, the tennisrecruiting.net. I mean, these are all things that if you're just sitting back waiting for someone else to do it for you, you're screwed. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. And you better get off your tail. And that's not just to the players, that's to the parents as well. Let me ask you something now. I mean, again, Scott, you deal with all kinds. I mean, the different ages and whatnot. You see the coaches and what they're doing. I mean, from an advice standpoint, what would your advice to the parent who's got the young child that they're, and when I say young, I mean, 8, 9, who are saying, okay, we want our kid to be a tennis player and we maybe want to pursue it collegiately. I mean, what's your advice for these parents with the middle school and high school kids?
I would say as soon as possible, as young of age as possible, get them on the right, in the right situation with, coaching is very important in our sport. There's a lot less kids that go out to the basketball court and they're just that physically talented and gifted, and they're going, the coach sees them when they're in 9th grade and the guy ends up being a defensive lineman for Georgia.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in our sport. It's a process that starts, between 5, 6 and 10 years old, and they compete year round. They have good coaching. Mm-hmm. They play in the right amount of tournaments for their age.
They're not burned out. They're not overly.
Right. They're practicing the right amount. They're setting goals. Their parents understand their role, and the coach should kind of outline that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The coach you select is important because they're going to give you the roadmap to success. And hopefully you do a little research on that coach and find one with experience in getting players to college.
Sure.
I would highly recommend that, and there's not a ton of those in every area. If you're in South Florida, there's a lot of them.
Right. Yeah. That seems to be a hotbed.
If you're in Minnesota, there's probably not a lot of them. So
Fargo.
Within your city, you want to do some research on which tennis program churns out. Have they ever had people play Division I college tennis that come out of that club? Mm-hmm. How many players has that coach coached that have gone on to play NAIA Division II, Division III, Division I college tennis? I'd say that's something that in our sport, for some reason, people overlook that. They see a coach.
That's a good point.
They see a coach somewhere, and like my dad told me when I was a kid, I'm not going to select the coach who's an insurance salesman that does tennis for fun
on the side,
2 days a week and charges $10. I'm going to do my research just like you would on the college coach. Mm-hmm. Do my research on the personal coach in the program where I'm putting my kid, and see, and it's not hard. You can go to a club and look around and you'll be able to tell the difference.
Sure.
So I would say getting that, machine in motion, is the earlier the better.
Excellent advice. Yeah. Well, and sounds like the same old tune that we hear time and time again from players, coaches, and whatnot. Early and often, proactivity. Don't just work hard, work smart. I hate to use the cliche, but never's been truer words spoken. Right. You can be doing everything right in the wrong direction and have a really negative result. So, but that's excellent advice, because that's something that, like you said, a lot of parents out there, they probably don't think, they figure, it's priced right. Now, and understand, we realize that the financial class, ticker is all over the place. Sure, go and find the professional coach if you can afford it. But if not, you work with what you got. And here's the thing, and we tell this, about other programs all the time. If you have that special talented child, don't be afraid to try to find one of these coaches. Let them evaluate your child, and maybe they'll want the honor of coaching your child and give you a break on cost or whatever, because they recognize that. You know what? Ask, because all they can do is say no. That's the worst thing that can happen, is that they say no. So don't be afraid to ask, especially if it's something that will benefit your child that tremendously. we talk about the kids playing scholarships and whatnot. I mean, there's so many competitions. There's obviously a lot of venues for them to go and be seen and whatnot. With the college coaches, and we've already talked about this a little bit as far as getting the schedule out to the coaches and let them know where they're going to be, or turning that around, calling the coaches and saying, hey, what events would you like to see me in? For some of these kids that maybe, again, they're not taking that aggressive path. They're not out at some of the bigger tournaments. In your opinion, let's say it's districts, tennis districts, and, is there any problem with calling maybe a coach within 100 miles and saying, hey, districts, we're playing XYZ, I'm ranked X, in the district, come on out and it's not an all or nothing. Is it worth calling these coaches and seeing if they'll come out to some of these lesser events?
I think my college coach came to our high school districts, but it was a rare situation where we had two kids on our high school team that were both signing significant scholarships to UNF. The foreign guy who played ahead of me, who ended up being my roommate for 4 years in college, he played one for our college too. You usually don't get a player like that playing in high school tennis anywhere.
Right.
And I was playing number 2, so on the last day of districts, he came out, but I'd say that is probably rare.
Rare, sure.
At some of the lower Division 2 or Division 3, they may do that. I'm just not quite sure. I know a lot of them stick to kind of the USTA tournaments in the section.
Okay.
There'll be a lot of Division 2 and Division 3 college coaches, I'd say, at level 5 tournaments and up. Which a level 5 is the lowest level tournament that's on the USTA national schedule.
Okay.
I would say you'll find a ton of colleges there, college coaches there, in an 18s designated or an 18s sectional tournament. And like I said, every section of the United States has a sectional tournament or three.
Gotcha.
So.
USTA, an expensive organization to be a member of? Or it's probably just an annual fee?
I think it's like $35 a year.
Okay. And now, I'm a parent. I see my kid, I'm thinking, I make okay income. Maybe maybe we'll pursue some of these tournaments. What kind of expense are, when you go to these types of tournaments, other than, hotel and room and board and stuff like that, do these tournaments last typically like a weekend? Some of the ones for the younger guys?
Most of them last 3 days.
Wow. Okay.
With, the exception being on the last day, you would have had to made the finals or playing off for third, fourth, or something like that to be there.
Sure.
So for most of the people going, it's 2 days. Some of the higher level events, like the sectional championship they just had in Florida that was in Orlando and Daytona, that's a 6-day tournament, and they hold it in the summer.
Nice.
So that can be expensive because if you make it to the last couple days, now you're in the hotel in Orlando for 5 days.
Yeah.
Room and board aside, what kind of entry fees are you typically looking at these types of tournaments?
I think that one was probably like $80 or $85.
Oh, is that right? Okay, so we're not talking about like having to shell out a couple $1,000 to compete in.
No.
So it's
Outside
actually
room and board.
Outside of room and board. Understand that. but if I targeted an event and said, geez, $85. You blow more than that on a round of golf, and that's a horrible golfer.
Yeah.
So
I would
not
say,
bad.
Again, in the USTA level of competition, a level 6 tournament is a super series that costs around $43 to $52. And then on up to probably, if you're in a USTA national championship, it could be $125. I'd say that's the range.
I tell you what, I'm surprised at that. Parents, if you're watching this, and I hope you are, that's pleasantly surprising. if you're thinking, oh gosh, a USTA and all these events, and I can't afford that. Tell you what, that is, if the USTA is a path recommended, and that's where the college coaches tend to flock to, I don't think anything's getting in your way to keep you from being involved and going out and playing in those tournaments. And now somebody might say, "Great, you write me a check for $85 or whatever." Well, you understand what I'm saying. It's not
And
like it's thousands of dollars.
There's smart ways to do it. Obviously, if it's you and your wife taking your son, you all have to live in that city and eat and so forth and stay there for 3 to 6 days. Depending on the level of competition. That's why it's good if you play at a club that has a bunch of competitive players. Like, we'll have 10 kids going to a tournament like the Florida State Closed together, and you can send your kid with $85 in a portion of the hotel room and a portion of the gas.
Right. It's all, you have
food.
roommates and whatnot.
That's what I had to do growing up. I had to go with a group and save my own money to do it because, those options just weren't there for my whole family to go to every tournament and stay at a 5-star hotel.
That's an excellent point, though, a great tip.
Yep.
I mean, you see, the kids go to these camps in other sports, and that's typically how they do it. They go with friends, and they're bunked up. And I tell you what, for the kids, hell, I'd rather do that than hang out with my parents. Sorry, Mom and Dad. You were great, but I'll be darned if I want to spend 6 days in a hotel room with you after you're lighting me up watching me play tennis.
That's right.
Right.
Oh, that's another excellent point, though. Parents, you got to be writing this stuff down. I want to ask you something. I mean, and this is just sheer opinion, or maybe you have some factual information, but, guys tennis, women's tennis. I mean, of course, Title IX kicked in, and it was women's everything. It was so much opportunity to fill those, voids. But, I mean, are you seeing any trends? Are you seeing more boys getting into tennis, more girls, or is it still pretty much status quo?
I think as far as the numbers of kids playing, I feel like your stat of 218,000 high school tennis players versus around 200 in the men, that surprised me. I think there's just so much more competition in the men for the scholarship dollars, because there's less dollars.
Right.
So in my mind, there was more men's tennis players than women. But clearly your stat showed that the opposite was true. So I think it was my perception was because of there's more men chasing less dollars. There's actually more women, but they're chasing a lot more dollars because of
more opportunity.
Title IX.
Title IX has been just a godsend for the women in sports in general.
I mean, you can be the second or third person deep on the bench, and you're on a full ride.
And it's body
for the
count.
women.
it is body count. How
and
they
the
count
men,
those.
if you're going to be in that 8-9 spot, you're burning up the coach's email, hoping to get the free spot on the team for that year.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
as far as sports in general, and this is kind of this kind of sucks to have to talk about. Honestly, I would have never thought that we'd get into a discussion of the demise of sports. And the one that really hits home as of recent is, of course, wrestling.
Right.
Wrestling. And we see, in the limelight, they're taking it, out, and then there's talk of maybe putting it back in. But you see college programs dropping wrestling because it's not the big money maker. You don't have the thousands flocking to watch. And so I'm thinking, well, geez, tennis. I don't even know if I've ever seen a collegiate tennis match on TV, on ESPN or anything.
you have to stay up late.
Yeah,
They're there.
They are there. Is there any scuttlebutt about what's happening to tennis as a sport collegiately? Is it on one of those back lists of potential sports that you'll start seeing schools cut out? Is there any rumors out there about that?
I know JU here in town did cut their tennis program, which that was disappointing for a coach in the area, because some of the kids that I've coached and that grow up, that's one less opportunity for them to have a chance to be on a team. So, I think.
And a team in the state of Florida where,
the
there's
city.
nothing but tennis.
Right.
Wow.
So there are a couple colleges, not to pick on JU. I know there's other colleges that have dropped their program. I don't think that's like rampant yet, but
It's not a good sign, though.
Yeah.
They bring in a football program, dump tennis. Is tennis an expensive sport to upkeep, or is it just because it's not a big moneymaker? Because you don't have the thousands of fans flocking and paying?
I think it's because it's a non-revenue generating sport. So, I don't know that it necessarily has to be that way, though. I think the more the sport grows in the United States, there could possibly, like I said, if you drive an hour and a half to Florida or 2.5 to Florida State, or you're a Georgia fan and you go one weekend, the level of play at collegiate tennis at those levels, like I said, some of those are, they're not making money, but they are lower level pro players.
Yeah.
It's a great, great level of tennis. Even here in town at UNF, if you go watch UNF play, I got to give a plug for my
Go Ospreys, or whatever their symbol is.
But their number one player who just graduated is a friend of mine, and he's going around playing, what would be the A-level minor league tennis, and he's consistently qualifying and winning matches in the main draw. So he's got a world ranking. He may be 900 or 1,000 in the world, and he plays for UNF.
Made the list. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see in the future. The more popular tennis gets, I would go to Florida and pit. Now I'm obviously in the industry,
sure,
but I would pay for a ticket to go watch a college match.
Especially that level of talent,
or Florida State, or UCF or USF. All those programs have great college, tennis players on them. So,
tell you, God forbid we actually have sports at schools not because of money. God forbid. There had to be a time way back when in the leather helmet days where sports were tied to representation of the program, of the school, of the college. It was pride. My guys are going to kick your guys' behinds, I'm sure it was just like that too.
Just like that.
But you know what I mean? And I know money is essential, pays the bills, does this, does that. But there's got to be somewhere along the line where they can, take it away. For things like tennis, those non-revenue producing sports, maybe there's actually something they can do where it's just representation. Right. Sometime in my life, which I hope I have a lot left of, we might just see that. Who knows? But, boy, if there's ever an effort for a petition, I'd say that was it.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, man, this has been great. I think that we could probably talk about tennis and recruiting in college and high school, for a week. And still leave a few stones unturned. But I think today we did a pretty good job at, exposing some things, maybe countering some myths out there, confirming some information for you parents out there. Again, pleasantly surprised I am of some of the things that we found out today. As a parent with a child that you're looking at a potential collegiate career or even high school career, I think the information that Scott shared with us today has been enlightening. And again, very positively so. So like we said before, if you have any particular questions about your situation, or if you want to confirm whatever we talked about today, again, go to www.viewmysport.com, click on Contact Us, and send your questions over, and we'll jump right on them and get whatever we can. I tell you what, I think that's a wrap, guys. That was excellent.
That was very good.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Hey, Scott, thank you
so
much for being
Thank you very
here.
much.
Yep, it was good meeting
All right,
you guys.
everybody out there, don't forget to tune in next week, every Wednesday, a new show on the Breakdown page on the ViewMySport.com website. In the meantime, for all of you out there, remember to enjoy the ride.